drama surrounding Tenshin Nasukawa's boxing journey reached a defining moment inside the packed Ariake Arena, where the kickboxing prodigy turned prizefighter stepped in against a man who, just 10 months earlier, had worn a world championship belt around his waist. Jason Moloney, the Australian veteran with 31 professional fights behind him, arrived not as a stepping stone but as a genuine litmus test, the kind of opponent designed to reveal whether Nasukawa's rapid rise through the paid ranks was built on substance or simply spectacle. This was only the 6th professional boxing match of Nasukawa's career, yet the stakes felt far heavier than a typical 6th fight, because everyone in that arena understood that a loss here would not just end a record, it would derail a narrative that had been carefully constructed since the moment he crossed over from kickboxing stardom into the unforgiving world of the boxing ring. From the opening bell, the tension was palpable. Moloney, a natural boxer with granite composure, came out probing behind his jab, testing distance in a way that only a man who has fought for and held a world title truly knows how. Commentators immediately zeroed in on a technical chess match unfolding between the two southpaws, noting how Moloney's high, tight guard made his right hand devastatingly difficult to read, while Nasukawa began mixing his angles early, switching between body shots and looping shots from the outside in a clear attempt to find the gaps in that disciplined defense. It became apparent within the first minute that Nasukawa was not simply relying on athletic gifts anymore. He was hunting with intention, particularly targeting the exposed temple area whenever Moloney's guard drifted toward the center. The first round set an ominous tone for what was to come. Right-hand counters snapped through the air from both fighters, each testing the other's chin and reflexes without fully committing. Nasukawa, showing the kind of fluid footwork that made him a kickboxing sensation, began finding success with sharp counters as Moloney pressed forward, his legs shifting rhythmically to create just enough space to land before retreating. When Moloney's counter right landed cleanly, the broadcast team erupted with acknowledgement, calling it a shot that clearly registered, hinting that this would not be a one-sided affair and that Moloney's championship pedigree was very much alive in him. Still, as the round wound down, it was Nasukawa advancing, pressing forward with growing confidence, letting his hands go behind stinging counters that suggested he had done his homework on facing a fellow southpaw for the first time in 5 years. As the fight progressed into the second and third rounds, a pattern began to emerge that would define the entire contest. Nasukawa's bodywork became a persistent, nagging problem for Moloney, with crisp shots to the ribs and midsection landed with a sound that visibly affected the challenger's rhythm. The commentary team praised the placement of these strikes, noting the exceptional angle changes Nasukawa employed, pivoting off his right foot to create new firing lines for his left hand, a subtle wrinkle that kept Moloney guessing and unable to settle into any comfortable rhythm. Meanwhile, Moloney's corner could be heard pushing him to close the distance, to make this an inside fight where his physicality and experience might overwhelm the younger man. But every time he surged forward, Nasukawa slipped away, using lateral movement and feints to avoid becoming a stationary target. By the fourth round, something had shifted in the atmosphere inside the arena. Nasukawa began incorporating more of his natural, unorthodox rhythm, the kind of movement that had made him must-watch television in kickboxing circles, mixing feints with sudden bursts of aggression. His trainer could be heard urging him not to overextend, warning that this fight demanded balance rather than recklessness, advice that echoed through the corner in the language of a mentor who understood exactly how dangerous complacency could be against a former title. The body shots kept coming, each one drawing winces and appreciative murmurs from ringside, and it became increasingly clear that Moloney was struggling to solve the puzzle in front of him, his own vaunted defense proving less useful against an opponent who refused to fight in straight lines. The middle rounds of the fight, from 5 through 7, showcased Moloney at his most desperate and determined, understanding that he could not allow this to slip into a wide decision loss. The Australian began letting his hands go with more urgency, throwing heavier, more committed punches designed to change the complexion of the fight in a single round. There were exchanges where both men Nasukawa answered every surge with poise, catching Moloney with sharp counters as he came forward, embodying the composure of a fighter who, despite his limited professional experience, seemed to have an intuitive feel for range and timing that many boxers spend a decade trying to develop. What made this stretch of the fight so compelling was the way Nasukawa's corner kept emphasizing distance management, reminding him again and again not to let Moloney get too close, understanding that proximity was the one dimension where the former champion hardly claimed advantage. Nasukawa listened, using his footwork to control when and where engagements happened, stepping back into range just long enough to land and then retreating before Moloney could capitalize. The commentary team marveled at this discipline, noting that it takes considerable conditioning and ring intelligence to maintain the kind of rhythmic spacing over an extended fight, particularly for someone still so early in his professional boxing career. Body shots continued to be the great equalizer, landing consistently enough that by the 7th round, observers noted a visible change in Moloney's posture, a slight guardedness that suggested the accumulation of blows to the midsection was beginning to take its toll. As the fight reached its championship rounds, the 8th, 9th, and 10th, the tension inside Ariake Arena became almost unbearable. This was widely known as the kind of stretch where fights are truly won and lost, where the accumulated fatigue of 9 or 10 rounds forces fighters to reveal their true character. Moloney, ever the professional, refused to fade quietly, continuing to press forward and land his own eye-catching combinations, at one point staggering Nasukawa with a series of shots that had the crowd gasping and the commentary team questioning aloud whether the momentum might be swinging back toward the challenger. Yet Nasukawa's response in these moments spoke volumes about his mental fortitude, absorbing the pressure and firing back with composed combinations rather than panicking, weathering the storm in a way that suggested genuine championship instincts rather than the fragility one might expect from a relative newcomer to the sport. The 9th round in particular stood out as a passage of pure drama, with both fighters trading in close quarters, neither willing to concede ground, each landing enough to keep the outcome genuinely uncertain heading into the scorecards. Nasukawa's handlers could be heard imploring him to keep his hands busy, to avoid getting caught standing still, while Moloney's corner reminded him that every exchange mattered. But the fight had tightened into the kind of contest where a single big moment could swing the entire result. It was boxing at its most human, two men pushing past exhaustion, drawing on reserves of will that only reveal themselves under the brightest lights on the highest stakes. Then came the 10th and final round, and with it, an outpouring of emotion from both corners. Nasukawa, sensing that this was his moment to cement the performance, pushed forward with renewed urgency, landing another crushing body shot that visibly affected Moloney's balance, drawing audible reactions from the crowd who understood they were witnessing something significant unfold in real time. Moloney, drawing on the resilience that had carried him through 3 decades of amateur and professional experience, refused to simply survive, instead meeting the aggression head-on, landing his own counters in an attempt to steal the round and, with it, perhaps the entire fight. The two exchanged freely until the final bell, each unwilling to leave anything in reserve, a fitting climax to a contest that had been built on mutual respect